Good morning. Thanks for joining me. We're out here bright and early on this cloudy day, and we're a little bit warm today. I probably don't need this shirt, but so anyway, today what I wanted to chat with you about is something, like why do people complicate their lives? Why do any of us make things more complicated? What is, we all want to have a simple life, at least I think most of us want to have a simple life, but yet it seems like everything that happens just makes everything more complicated. Why is that? So let's chat about that this morning. And welcome to Goose Pond Hideout. I'm Rob. I've decided to, for a while anyway, I'll leave those little intros out where I take pictures of the geese or the animals or whatever. I mean, if you like that, let me know, but most people like to get right to it, so let's do that. And so I was doing a little bit of research on why we make our lives so complicated. And there's this thing called the complexity bias. And the way that our brain works is our brain assumes that if something's more complicated, it's got to be better than if something is simple, right? And so we're just sort of wired to make our lives more complicated, because then we think we're being more important or we're doing something better, because more complicated is obviously better than simple, right? And it got me to thinking about this old TV show that's in the reruns now or whatever, but it was called Home Improvement with Tim Allen, and his character's name was Tim, and his sidekick was Al in the suspenders and flannel shirts, and his neighbor was Wilson, where you only ever saw his eyeballs or that. And Tim always made everything more complicated. It was more power, and whether it was his lawnmower or a saw or whatever, he was always making it more complicated. And then, of course, everything went bad, went sideways, went the wrong way. And one of my favorite sayings that I try to live my life by is, better is the enemy of good enough. Better is the enemy of good enough. Now, I'm not talking about cutting corners or cheating or being sloppy or lazy about something, but doing something the right way, but not having that mindset that don't be a perfectionist. You don't have to make it absolutely perfect. That good enough is good enough. And whether it's something on the homestead, making a video, whatever it is, don't get caught up in that thinking that you've just got to keep making it better and better and better. That better is the enemy of good enough, right? You be a good girl now, good girl. So, another thing that happens to us is this false promise of making our life easier. Is we buy gadgets, we buy things with the thinking that it's going to make our life simpler, but actually the gadget thing is more complicated. And whether it's something in the kitchen, a waffle maker or a yogurt maker, or whatever it is, or a tool, something to use, a fancy lawnmower or whatever it is, and we think it's going to make our life easy. And because it's complicated, it actually makes our life more complicated. And along with that same kind of thinking there is, make your coffee at home in the pot. But a lot of people say, well, I don't have time to make my cup of coffee. I'll just pick one up on the way to work. So go through the drive-through at a Starbucks or whatever it is in your area, and you sit in line in the drive-thru and you order your fancy cup of coffee, and you probably spend $5 or more on the cup of coffee. And so one, you're wasting money because you think, 5 days a week, that's $25 a week times 50 weeks out of the year. That's a noticeable amount of change when you could just be making your coffee at home, but you don't have time to make it at home. So let's, sit in drive-through line and waste time getting my cup of coffee on my way to work. And that's the silliness of that. Another thing is online time. And of course, I'm older, and the internet didn't exist when I was a young person. And we didn't have social media, no internet. I mean, we didn't even have computers really. They were just starting to come out. And personal computers, obviously we had big industrial ones. And so that's something to be thinking about, is your online life. And I shut my phone off about 10:30 at night. And I literally power it down and turn it off. I don't just put it on airport mode or no notifications or that. I shut my phone down at about 10:30, and I put it on the little charger, and it's in the dining room of the house. My wife leaves her phone out in the living room, and I turn it on about 7 in the morning after I get the coffee going and that, and then I fire up the phone. And I don't need to answer an email or a notification the instant I get it. If you're driving down the road in your car and your phone's in your pocket and it pings, you pull over to the side of the road and say, oh, I better see what that is. It's, we've let that consume our lives, and that complicates our lives. When I was a kid, when you left the house, you were incognito, right? Nobody knew where you were, what you were doing. You couldn't check up on anybody because the phone hung on the wall in the kitchen or the living room or whatever. And we had no online connections. So be thinking about that. Maybe on the weekend, on a Saturday or a Sunday, is don't even turn your devices on. Just leave them off and live the old-fashioned way. Play some board games or something, and read a book, and a real book with actual pages, not on your Kindle or whatever. And so be doing that. So remember that better is the enemy of good enough. And another phrase that comes to mind is, when something's going on in your life and you're all stressed and everything seems complicated, is anybody hurt? Is anybody bleeding? Is anything on fire? And if it's not, then you're good to go. It's not a problem. It's not a complexity. And so be thinking about, don't let tasks run on. Close things out. If you got things on your mind like, oh, I need to go do this, or I need, get those things done, and that way that'll simplify your life. And don't make things complicated just for the sake of making them complicated. Make your own coffee, sit outside, drink, have a conversation with the animals, and my little fire is going. I really like this thing, but it doesn't burn for very long. It's kind of like a rocket stove. You got to keep loading it up. But so decomplex your world. Make your own coffee. Better is the enemy of good enough. Get things done. Close things out. Don't buy gadgets with the thought that it's going to make your life simpler, because 9 out of 10 of them make your life more complicated. And just relax and have some fun and be a simple living person, right?